Hi, my name is Cheyne Walls, and thank you so much for checking out my channel. I make my living as a nature landscape photographer, and on this video, I'm here in my Laguna Beach studio to talk watches. And more specifically, which is the best watch for a travel kind of landscape nature photographer? Stay tuned to find out. First off, just a quick little apology. I'm just getting over this little flu, so if there's a little roughness in my voice, I do apologize. So, on to these watches. Now, on this video, I was just going to talk about very popular Apple Watch, the Garmin Instinct, the the Seamaster Planet Ocean, and then the Breitling Aviator 8. Now, these are all my personal watches, so there's no sponsorship with this. This is all my personal feeling on these watches. And as you can tell just by this lineup, they're very, very different. Now, arguably, this can all just be done with your phone. So why do I need a watch on my wrist and not just do everything through this phone? And it's a good question, but just the way I shoot with a technical camera, which means there's no automatic setting. Everything's manual. The f-stop, shutter speed, ISO, you set everything. There's no little, automatic button on this. So I need to rely on my watch for the exact exposure. But what it is with having a phone, these are big, hunky pieces of equipment. And sometimes it's hard, looking at this, resetting it. It's so much simpler in my mind just to have something on the wrist. You just can turn it. You can still use that hand to do other things. This camera, again, you almost need two hands to shoot it with the camera release, and to wake up the digital back. But it's just so much easier for me. Everything's right here. That's why I prefer a watch over my cell phone. As well as, too, when I'm out hiking, sometimes I don't want to take my cell phone with me and I'm out shooting and enjoying nature. Sometimes it's best just to leave the cell phone at home. Talk a little about each one. Now, the Apple Watch, like I said earlier, is by far the most popular watch of this little collection I have here. And it's a great watch. It's amazing what you can do, what the computing power you have that you can just wear on your wrist. The things I like about this is exactly that. You have all this power here. You can connect into your phone. Your phone can, just be on a table somewhere and you can do everything through this. It has, everything a watch needs, secondhand. You can set it as a digital layout to read the time, check your email. I mean, you can do everything with this watch. The negatives about this watch is you can do everything with this watch. Now, I do wear this watch occasionally now. It's more kind of an office watch for me. It is kind of nice when I'm printing and stuff like that, an email or phone rings. I can just look at my wrist, like I talked about earlier, just a little simple, there's the wrist, and have it on. You have to go find your cell phone. So that is helpful for it, but the other problems I have with this, out in the field, the battery power is not the best, and the other big thing with this is every time I look at my wrist, Apple owners will know it doesn't always show up. So if I'm in a hurry trying to get an exposure and I look at the watch, sometimes the little sensor or whatever doesn't quite set it that it should turn on. So I have to do it again, sometimes 3 times to get that watch going. So as a field watch, it's not the best, but also too, and it's kind of the Garmin's in the same boat with this. Garmin's a great watch. Well, here, let's just go to the Garmin on that note, because it's kind of the same. Garmin's very similar. This is a great watch. This is the Instinct. And comparing apples to apples with these more expensive watches, the Omega and the Breitling, this is more of the baseline watch. I know you can get a lot higher end ones, which gives you more functions, longer battery life. But these are my own watches. It's my own money. And I wasn't quite sure I was ready to spend, was it $1,000, $1,500 for the top of the line Garmin when I wasn't 100% sure I wanted it. So I thought I'd take this small step in. Now, I was really impressed with this watch. Being a base model, it had a lot more functions than I thought it would. And I really like the lightweight and just how durable it is. I mean, you can see here, I banged this up pretty good, and it feels more kind of like a little cheap plastic here, but it's not. This is pretty durable. The Garmin watch is an excellent watch, especially for an outdoorsman. It can do so much. Since I'm doing everything manually, I'm not a computer expert. I'm not computer inclined. Since this watch, it's a great thing, and like the Apple Watch, it's great that it has all these other functions, but also a downfall of it, it has all these functions. And I know the problem I've had with this one too, wearing it out, I push a lot of the buttons when I don't mean to. I know there's this, what is it, the set button or something down here. You can press a few times to get back to the menu, but sometimes I'll be walking, in the Apple Watch as well, I'll be hiking, going through bushes, you know, kind of hit my wrist, and that pushes up the buttons. And I'll look down to my watch, see what time it is, and I'm in a menu I've never seen before. I try to go back, and I'll finally go back, but then I'll find out later that I've set something that I didn't want to set. There's one time I somehow set an alarm for 2 o'clock in the morning. That wasn't the best. That wasn't optimal. But that's the one problem with this. The buttons, I do hit them accidentally. Great watch for hiking. I use it a lot. But as a photographer, it's not quite the best watch in the way with the Apple Watch is mostly the battery, the charging, so complicated. And I'm one of those people who, when I buy something, I want it to last as long as possible. I mean, if you see some of my other videos, all the jackets, the clothes, the camera, everything's over 10 years old almost. These lenses, I like to keep stuff. And no matter how good these Apple and Garmin watches are, which they are good products, please don't, I'm not saying they're not, you have to replace them every 2 to 3 years. You just have to. Either the battery dies, again on this, the battery life on this thing is about 6 hours. That's just how it is with these technology pieces. You have to replace them. Real quick, these other 2 watches that I'm about to talk about, they just recommend you send them in to get serviced every 10 years. These watches will last a lifetime. These great watches have a lot more functions like we talked about, but you do have to replace them every 2 to 3 years. Battery life, technology changes, sometimes can't connect with your phone, so on. Now I know I'm not getting the full performance out of the Garmin that I could, and I'm sure with some more time and me really learning how to use the watch, this watch would be a lot more effective for me and I'd probably like it a little bit better. Now on to the automatic watches, and you already know from me talking about the Apple and the Garmin watch, the big fault with those is their batteries. You have to charge them. These automatic watches, for lack of a better term, charge themselves. They have a special setup here that your motion of you just walking, doing whatever you do, hiking, or just movement, generates power for these. It turns a little screw, a little winder that holds that power. I know the price difference is huge on these. I understand that. But the beautiful craftsmanship of these watches will last forever. And that's what, again, I'm kind of drawn to these a little bit more over the computer watches, just in the way that, I mean, the craftsmanship of a rose stock lens, just, it blows my mind. I mean, the craftsmanship of these watches, the romanticism of it, just the way it's built in miniature to last forever and tell time, it still kind of blows my mind. So as of right now, we're only halfway through the video, but you kind of see where I'm leaning on the best watch for a photographer. But let's get into this. I love the simplicity of these while still serving so many functions. And what I mean by that is just watching the second hand, this is how I time my exposures. But then also too, when I'm doing long exposures, it's got this moving bezel, and the computer watches do all this. I do know that. My phone does this. But it's such a simple thing on the wrist, just a quick turn, and you can use these numbers here to set the timer, however long, 10 seconds, 20, 50, whatever it needs to be. It's just, I love the simplicity of how simple and quick you can do things. Yes, the Garmin, yes, the Apple, they all do that, but you got to go through 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 menus sometimes to set that up. And you know, when you're in a rush and it's raining out, Sometimes, especially on the Apple Watch, it's hard to press the right one. Garmin is a little bit better, but I just love that simple. Everything's in front of you. You're not going to go to the wrong menu. It's just a simple, quick turn. These are simple watches. It is amazing, but they do so much for how simple they are. Now, another plus the automatic watches have over the computer watches, and again, I apologize for keep calling them computer watches. I'm not there. I'm sure there's a better term for it, but you know what I'm talking about. Is the anti-reflective, the scratch-resistant sapphire on both the automatic watches, and it's got a special film over both sides of the sapphire. I believe on both these watches. So everywhere you look at it, you're not getting a reflection. The Garmin, the Apple don't have that, and that's a huge help, especially overcast skies. You look up, out in the middle of a field, you get that really glare, and you got to kind of angle your watch. I know these are petty things. I'm just telling you my thoughts. Now, this Omega watch can go down to 600 meters. Now, never will I can't even survive, humans can't even survive that depth. But it's nice to know that when I'm surfing, swimming in a lake, or whatever I might be doing, even a little bit of scuba diving, this watch will be overprotected and I don't have to worry about it in that way. And these other watches, even though they're rated for 100 meters, that doesn't mean 100 meters deep. That's in a perfect scenario tested. You got to remember too, in the real world, it's always different. 100 meters, yeah, it's nice to know. But if you're 30 meters down and you bump something or you're moving around, 600 meters, I'm sure that's pretty safe. 30 meters and you bump it and you're moving around a lot. Another special thing about this Omega watch is, and I'm going to use the wrong term here, I apologize, I'm not the watch expert, but this is specially built to resist magnetic fields. Traveling a lot, you come up against a lot of those magnetic fields, whether it be magnets on your backpack, purse, whatever, even on your pants or something like that, in your jacket, or going through the metal detectors at the airport. It affects all these watches in a different way, but not nearly as much on the Omega because it's built to resist that. Onto the Breitling. Now, this is the workhorse of my watches. This watch I wear probably about 70% of the time when I'm out shooting, and that's because this is a chronograph. And what that means is it's got a timer built in. Now, if you haven't guessed already, yes, this is my favorite watch. I do think out of these 4 watches, it's the best watch for travel, nature, landscape, whatever you want to call yourself, photographer. Just in the way of its simplicity and how well it does those simple things so well. You don't need to charge it. It's got a quick timer like the Omega. It's got the bezel, so you can set whatever you need to do if you need to do time things or whatever. With the chronograph, that timer gives you perfect exposures. Simple but elegant and effective. And that goes for these chronographic buttons on the Breitling. This is so nice that these are big and chunky buttons. You don't bump them. They're well designed where you don't bump them by accident. But when you need to, set a timer or plan out your exposure, time your exposure, this is a perfect, elegant way to do it. These are so big and chunky, you feel it when you press it down. You feel it when it releases. You don't need a beep. You feel it. And also, too, the great thing about this watch is with gloves on. You can't use gloves on the Apple Watch. It's a little bit more difficult to use the Garmin with gloves. But with this Breitling, with the chunkiness, with the feel of these buttons, you feel it when you press it. You feel it when it's released. You feel when you reset it. And that's really nice. And that simplistic, well-designed element of these automatic watches is very helpful. As well as, back to the Omega, it is nice in the way too that you can move the bezel with gloves on very easily, and you don't have to press buttons like this whole video is about. I love simplicity that works well, and the two automatic watches do that so well. They don't do much, but what they do extremely well, diligently, and they keep doing it forever and ever, as long as you take care of them. And that's where the rubber kind of meets the road with being a professional. As a professional photographer, you're unveiling new work at special gallery events. You're doing these fundraiser events. You're going to these places where you can't really wear a Garmin watch to. You can't wear an Apple Watch. It is becoming more acceptable, but you have to go to these big events. And again, that's why these two automatic watches, this is where they just catapult themselves ahead. Because like I said earlier, they're just as much at home at a gallery unveiling as they are in the Sahara Desert. And that's what makes these watches so special and makes them professional. I don't want to sound pretentious, but God, how do I put it? This is that thing that so simple, that took so much research, so much precision, so much labor and hand quality labor to create something so beautiful and magnificent just to keep time. It's that special thing that it's hard to understand. I still don't fully understand it. But like a camera, same kind of thing. The lenses, the glass, you can call it the movement too, the shutter release, everything. All that knowledge going into something that's manual, that'll last for so long. Yes, I know, the computer, yes, it takes amazing things, does amazing things, but it's still just a computer chip. All this stuff, the hand-built stuff, is, I think, geez, again, I'm at a loss for word for stuff like this, because it's so amazing what we can do and what we still kind of do. Computers are taking over. They are. There's no question about it. I mean, I shoot digital. I still enjoy film, but computers are taking over. But every little chance you have, back to the kind of the romantic side of it, every chance you have to get those little elements that are handmade, hand-designed. I mean, some of these took weeks to build stuff like this, to be so accurate, to not have any batteries, any computer chips, something that works just by the movement of your arm. That still really, really impresses me. And I know we're losing that in today's world. But something that elegant to be able to work, again, in the high deserts, under the ocean, in these deep, dark forests or woods, and to be acceptable at these high-end, kind of snooty parties, that's special. These are both, the Omega and the Breitling, these are very, very expensive watches. They're also one of those things that I can pass down. They're gonna last forever if you take care of it. That's special. No, not all watches I know will do that. You take care of these. And because of that craftsmanship, because these are at home anywhere and still be special, this is why I choose these as the best watch for a professional photographer. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers. Thank you again so much for watching. If you like what you saw, please hit subscribe. Feel free to comment if you disagree, agree with me. Also, too, we'll be doing some more photography videos coming up soon. If you like the watch aspect of this video, I'll be doing individual, I guess not critiques, but I guess reviews on each one of these watches in the field coming up in the future. Thanks again. Cheers.